following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Telly Olson. I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zig Zag Man. I'm in Alameda, California, as per usual. And as you know, it's right across the bay from San Francisco, across the moat from Oakland. And I am privileged to talk to the most interesting people on the planet on a regular basis. And that's a fact, Jack. So let me start with my two guests. How about that? Couldn't get more interesting than Michael Duca and Jerry Feitelberg. Start with you, Michael. Hello, sir.
Good to talk to you, Ralph. It's been a while.
It has been, and we've had a strike, not a strike, but a discontinued season, and I don't get to see you guys at all. Jerry Feitelberg's here too, and the only thing wrong with this, I don't mind being sequestered where I am in Northern California, with a beautiful backyard that gives me an opportunity to walk and exercise and all that stuff. But I miss face-to-face with my friends. And I don't get many face-to-face with my friends as it is. I'm basically, my friends are all over the place. Jerry, being so close, and we had a regular thing going at Nations on Webster, and we can't do that. And this thing is getting to the point where this whole pandemic is getting to the point where not only are we inconvenienced, but if we're smart, and not just the three of us, but folks out there, we are very, very worried. And I want to start with Jerry and get a pharmacist, licensed pharmacist of the year in California in 1995. You know your stuff, Jerry. Give it to us straight, but be gentle.
Well, thank you, Ralph, and thank you for having me on the program once more. It's good to be with you and Michael. We're talking about the COVID-19 pandemic. The United States has not dealt with it as some of the European countries, but there are things going on that hopefully we may be hopefully turning a corner by the end of the year. They're talking about, they've done certain research. They're finding that heparin might help with the treatment of the disease. They're finding other agents that may slow down the spread of the disease. They're working on a vaccine. Our friends at Pfizer and I think there's another lab, Moderna. Moderna is going to phase 3 trials on a vaccine. Pfizer's gearing up to make 100 million vaccine doses available when it gets approved by the FDA, and then they can manufacture up to 500 million doses. So there are things going on. You have all the top scientists in the world working on this project. It's the most researched thing going on right now. And of course, we're learning new things about the COVID-19 virus. So the most important thing that we can do is social distancing and wearing masks. Dr. Fauci, who's going to throw out the first pitch tonight at the Washington Nationals game, has 4 words of advice for people. 1 is wear masks, and 2 is avoid crowds. So there you have it. Fauci is going to do it in an empty stadium, though, which is kind of sad, but that's the way life is these days.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. does Fauci? I'll ask both of you guys. Does Fauci remind you at all of Bobby Shantz?
Oh yeah,
the crafty left-hander. 5'7", a crafty left-hander, and the voice of reason for this country right now. I don't understand why it's taken Trump this long to wear a mask at all, but he seems to have reverted in the past 2 days, and I think he's got some real cognizant problems. He's babbling on an interview I heard today for about 20 minutes about a test that he took to prove that he wasn't demented, and he sounded demented. And it would be kind of humorous if he didn't have the codes to the nuclear weapons in his pocket. Is there a real danger along those lines? I'm getting off the subject, but I'll let you address that one, Michael. Are you worried about his really being off the tracks?
I didn't sleep in a Holiday Inn last night, Val.
Oh, very good, Michael.
I mean, it's impossible for me to answer that question without including just a heaping helping of bias. What I'm worried about and what may come to pass are often two different things. So what I will say here is this. I am concerned that the for lack of a better term, the non-confirmed cabinet with which he has surrounded himself, full of interim appointments and temporary secretaries, doesn't seem to have the ability or willingness to stand up to him as much as I would hope that they would. Because no president is going to go off and use or even access the nuclear football on his own. That's
I meant that in general terms. I'm sure he's not going to set it off, but he could do a lot of damage between now and November without setting.
Oh Lord, he's already done a lot of damage. He's done a lot of damage.
Of course.
Now and noon.
Okay, so that starts. I wanted to start off on a positive note. We are all in Northern California. I think Jerry's not in Alameda right now. Are you on the peninsula?
Yes, I am hanging out down the peninsula today, and
okay.
I will be in Alameda a week from Sunday as we are going to celebrate my older daughter's 50th birthday. We're going to have just a small family gathering, and that's it. I'm starting to get a little stir crazy because I just stay at home most every day. Very rarely go out, although I have a couple errands to do after we finish the podcast. But it would be nice. I'm missing nations, and we got a thing yesterday.
I don't know. I haven't been face to face with anybody but my housemates for like 3 months. They don't allow me. They don't allow me out, and I don't blame them. You got to stay sequestered, and whether or not we get together. I wanted to say that, and you're in Pittsburgh, am I correct, Michael?
No, I'm in Richmond.
In Richmond. I'm sorry. Okay. We are all three having a beautiful day weather-wise.
Well,
we sure are. I feel after listening to you two, like all of a sudden I'm the renegade. I have actually eaten 2 meals that I did not personally cook in the last 130 days. My wife and I went out for dinner on Father's Day to St. Helena, where we went to Taylor's Refresher and had a lovely hamburger outdoors.
I know where Taylor's is.
And I would say an average of once a week, I go out and do necessary shopping.
Oh, that's good.
Kelly's been out of the, Kelly has been out of the house, including the 2 trips with me. She's been out of the house 5 times in 130 days, and 2 of those times were to drop off her saliva sample for her COVID tests that are being done by the San Francisco Giants.
Wow.
I have a note of I received something yesterday. I think it was on Facebook that Oli's restaurant, which is Oli's a waffle shop in Alameda, they're on hard times right now, and they're struggling to stay open. And there's an institution they go back 90 years, and it would be a shame if they had to close. I have
some information on that because people who own Oli's, the wife is the mother of my son's girlfriend.
Oh, wow! How are they doing?
Yeah, her son,
her fiance, and what they have done is they are suspending construction on their retirement home. They're going to finish it and sell it, actually, and utilize that money to ensure that all of their employees stay employed for some extended period of time. They've got about $400,000 of equity in that house. And they will hope to keep the business going and then be able to deal with their retirement plans, once things normalize again. But they've made the decision to liquidate that piece of real estate and use the funds to keep all of their employees. I believe they have either 40 or 41 employees going there. As they said, we didn't build the business, our employees did.
Well, you don't find much thinking like that in corporate management on any level nowadays. So that's very unusual, and that's to be commended for sure.
Oh yeah, well, Vicki, I've known Vicki for 40 years. When she was very young when I met her. The restaurant was only 2 doors down from Alameda Drug, and it's really an institution. During World War II, people would come to the drugstore and they'd go to Oli's and they get news about it was the center of town, and they get all the news about all the soldiers and sailors from Alameda. They come and congregate. They used mail in those days. It wasn't instant like everything is today. And it has a long tradition in Alameda, and it'd be a shame to lose it. It's really a very iconic restaurant.
Well, their heart's in the right place, so I know they'll get the support they need from the community. Alameda is very good that way. They rally. Let's put it that way. How long did you live here, Michael?
Almost 30 years.
Wow. And I'm going on more than 30. I'm going on, actually 29. 29 years in Alameda. How about you, Jerry? We have a combined 59 and 40. We have 90. 40. Yeah, we have 90 years of being in Alameda. So a lot is invested. I will say even today the prices of homes have gone up considerably It is not a secret anymore, but it's still a bargain in terms of what you get. Speaking of, I might as well announce this. Wait a second. Alameda has changed names of Jackson Park because they are renaming it because of Jackson's reputation that was not always positive. And they took the sign down as of this morning, and that's a big thing because we've got to get politically correct in this country. That's part of it.
Well, we have an interesting situation up in where I have my vacation home up in Mendocino. We're close to the town of Fort Bragg, and Fort Bragg was named for Braxton Bragg. He had served in the Mexican-American War of 1847, and he never was on the West Coast. But one of his lieutenants, when they were up in that area, they named the fort for him. It's now known as Fort Bragg, California. It's also the military installation in North Carolina. But Bragg was a Confederate general, and apparently not a very good one. And he has two places named for him. And when Trump leaves office, I think if the Democrats take over, that they will have an appropriations bill, and they'll have all those forts with the Confederate generals. They'll remove the names and replace them with other heroes, American heroes, not Confederate soldiers. So the town of Fort Bragg has in California, I believe they're going to have either a referendum or city council meeting to determine whether they're going to continue with the name of Fort Bragg. It's a very interesting situation.
It is. I personally feel that that's one of those cases where you probably are better off leaving it alone. First of all, like you said, Bragg was not a Confederate hero. And the town wasn't named for him when he was a Confederate. The town was named for him when he was a general of the Union Army, or the United States Army at the time. There was no Union even.
Yeah, and there's only a small plaque up there. There's a little tourist area, and they had a little plaque gave the historic background of the town. Most people didn't even know who it was named for, as far as I know. And most of the people never have said, gee, we're named for some Confederate general. Never heard that before.
Right. Yeah, it's a little bit sketchier than the issue that they had in Marin County last year when the Dixie School District had to decide what it was going to call itself going forward.
They knew it was something else.
Well, it was that's actually one of the oldest school districts in the state of California, and it too was named before Dixie had a racial connotation. I forget now. I actually paid attention at the time, but the etymology of the word Dixie is kind of interesting because it originally applied basically to New Orleans and not to the South in general.
I thought it was it was a $10 note in the French word for 10, and they bastardized it to make it come out Dixie. So
exactly, and it was in New Orleans that they were still using money with French terminology on it. This was, of course, before we had national banks and banks were allowed to issue their own local currencies.
Yeah, it's very interesting stuff. We're doing a little history today.
Absolutely. Life in Northern California and why it's this way. There's an old expression, if you don't use history as your guide, you're going to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. Unfortunately, we've reached the point where we seem to be repeating the same mistakes. Vis-a-vis getting back to the the virus, do you think we opened too soon? And if so, is that not just absolute stupidity that we did?
Well, some states didn't shut down at all. You go into the southern states, they did not, in the early going, they didn't have a lot of infections. And the Republican governors in Georgia and Florida and Alabama and Tennessee and Arkansas, we're not going to wear a mask, maybe Oklahoma too. And they didn't have a lot of infections. Had we all gone on a shutdown and worn masks earlier, we probably would have maybe, who knows, maybe 50% less infections and maybe 50% less deaths. But we didn't. And now it's raging out of control in Florida. They have 10 or 12,000 cases a day. The deaths will come. And California, we were doing great for a while. Now we're having a surge. A lot of the surge is occurring in Southern California. And we don't know why. Are we going to have to shut down again? We may have to. Well, it's very difficult for the businesses to stay alive while this is going on, but we may have to do it. Hopefully, as I said earlier, that we'll have a vaccine. But the most important thing that you can do now, again, to repeat myself, is wear a mask and stay away from crowds. And you do the best you can. I know a lot of people are getting stir crazy and they want to get out and move out and get back to their normal routines. But no one knows who's got the virus. It's invisible. And the only way you can detect it is through testing. And we haven't ramped up the testing enough, although the guy in Washington says we're doing more testing than anybody else. We got to do even more. But we don't have enough tests. We can't get the tests back as rapidly as we want. Today we got, Washington is starting play tonight against the Yankees, and their star 20-year-old player Juan Soto was diagnosed with COVID-19 today. He was tested 2 days ago. And so the results, he was exposed to his teammates. For how many of those guys will be coming down? They have to test all those guys. They have to do the contact testing. One of the things that people are worried about with baseball is that when they go on the road, players are going to be in hotels, and they do have control over them when they get to the ballpark. But what happens when they leave the ballpark and go to the hotels? Are they going to stay in their rooms? Are they going to socialize? Who knows what they're going to do? Hopefully, they're young men, and hopefully they'll use their heads. But who knows what they're going to do? And hopefully they won't get infections. So,
hey, let's not understate the fact that Juan Soto is probably an up-and-coming star. Let's say that. Probably as good as any up-and-coming stars. And Freeman, the kid from Atlanta, contracted it a couple of weeks ago. I think he's back. But you don't get sick enough to be on a ventilator. You don't have any real symptoms, but it's a virus. And what it does to your lungs, these are world-class athletes, and anything like this could hurt their careers. I mean, we don't.
Well,
am I right?
Know. Let me jump in here for a minute. There's a couple of things that you need to talk about here. One of them is that over time, the epidemiologists have decided that this is not a respiratory disease, Ralph. We thought it was for months, but it is not a respiratory disease. It is apparently a blood-borne disease that produces respiratory and other symptoms. From people that I have talked to, friends of mine in their 60s and 70s who are microbiologists and neurobiologists and who actually know this stuff, they say that the effect that this has is that it primarily what it does is it creates floating clumps of blood clots. microbes,
yeah,
which then can affect everything from your lungs to your spleen to your thyroid to God knows what else. It has the effect of mini strokes. And the issue that we have to think about, especially with these 20-year-olds, isn't, I was discussing this with my wife today. They were talking about how, well, there were so many cases reported today and so many people were reported as recovered. How are they defining recovered? Does recovered mean they didn't test positive for 2 deaths in a row? That doesn't mean you're recovered any more than the fact that you're no longer itchy means that you're recovered from the chicken pox. The chicken pox lives in the myelinated sheathing of your nerves for 20, 30, 40 years and then decides to pop up and say, hi, I'm shingles.
Right. It lives there forever. And you're absolutely right. Fortunately, and as you know, there have been 2 versions of the shingles vaccine. The first one was a one-shot deal, and I thought it was going to be really effective. Then I found out it's only effective 30% of the time. But the new one that they developed is a 2-shot process, and it's 90% effective. That doesn't mean that you won't get it. And I'm going to give you another example.
I have 3 of them. So am I 120% covered?
I hope so. 3 years ago, and this was before I got the second shingles vaccine. I had an attack of Bell's palsy, the 7th cranial nerve, and when I went in for treatment, I got an antiviral and prednisone as the treatment. They think that the nerve that the shingles virus may have attacked the nerve at that time. It's one of the possibilities. There are other possibilities. There's no way of knowing. Fortunately, I got on the antiviral immediately and the prednisone immediately, and I was over it in 30 days. I had a very mild case, maybe because I had the shingles vaccine that mitigated the effects of it. And I was very, very fortunate. But this is what can happen. The virus gets you. We also have the HIV virus. That gets in the body. That people are living longer because they have these antivirals, and it stops it from replicating in the body. But it's there. They don't kill it. It's there. So
same is true of herpes simplex.
Herpes, yeah, exactly. The your cold sore virus. These are things that live in the body, and we don't know if COVID is eliminated, even though it runs its course. And there's a discussion whether people who have had COVID-19, if they could get it again. We don't know if it comes back.
We don't know a lot about that. One thing that we do know is that the apparent antibody load drops after a few weeks, but what we don't know, because we know so little really about our immune system and how it works, there are some indications that even if your antibody count drops, that your immune system, once it's been stimulated to make the antibodies by a vaccine, will know how to make them if it needs them in the future.
I hope so.
There's just a whole lot that we don't know here, and there's a whole lot, just a tremendous amount of stuff that's being plucked by mainstream media off of preprint servers. Jerry, you know what preprint servers are?
No.
I don't either. You would assume that, wouldn't you, Michael?
that is where scientific research is published before it's reviewed.
Oh, okay. I got it.
It's put up on preprint servers, and until you have people who work in the field, specifically in the field, until you have a microbiologist review the experimental design and the mathematical analysis of data of microbiology, it's meaningless. And until you have a lot of peers review it and say, yes, there's nothing wrong with the methodology here, we can rely on these conclusions, it's meaningless. And people are running off spouting this stuff that they're seeing on these servers. I mean, the classic example of that, and believe me, I'm not talking about, some guy with a medical degree from the Canary Islands throwing something up on a server. Remember back in early April when Stanford published the results of their community survey on antibodies down in Santa Clara County and decided that we were underreporting the actual case count by somewhere between 10-fold and 40-fold? Turns out the mathematics behind that were completely flawed. That was a preprint server that they got it off of. Nobody waited for the peer review. We are in such a hurry to get information about this that we're just diving on anything that people put out there.
Well, look what Trump did with the hydroxychloroquine and how people went out and bought tons of it. It wasn't peer-reviewed for the COVID-19. The drug has been around for a long time to treat malaria. And I think that when we went on a trip,
and lupus.
We took the drug when we were when we went to one of these areas where malaria was. So it has a purpose, but for them to come out and say it helped with COVID-19 without the testing, and they've run several studies now with the double-blind test, and they're finding that it's not what they're touting it to be. So,
no.
Well, that was to satisfy Trump's attempt to keep the economy going at that point. He wanted to minimize the effects of the virus to keep the economy going. And it worked for a while. The stock market was soaring. Then people started dying.
There's another factor. One of his big donors was, I think it was Ken Fisher Investments. I'm not sure, positive about, but one of his big donors had a large investment in Sanofi, which is the French firm that makes Plaquenil, which is hydroxychloroquine. So he was helping one of his donors. So,
Hey, let me just interject one thing. Jerry, you mentioned prednisone. And you mentioned that drug, Michael, that drug is a cure for lupus or it helps lupus. Well, prednisone was the drug that my son's late mother took for her lupus. And it is a steroid. And it really, if you take it for a long time, which she did, she was forced to by lupus, and it basically deteriorated her kidneys, her renal system. Everything went bad. So
they've used
rest
it
in
for
peace,
years.
Diane Satin.
They've used it for years. They used it for long-term chronic conditions for years and years and years, particularly with a lot of respiratory diseases. And people have had so many adverse effects to it. It's not as widely used. They use it for short-term problems, but a lot of doctors are staying away from it, from the adverse. A lot of people who had arthritis or rheumatoid arthritis, they would prescribe prednisone for that, and people would develop moon face where they're retaining water, and then they'd have a particular look. And so it's a drug. It has to be used auspiciously, and a lot of I've seen too many people who are on it chronically, and they've had a lot of adverse effects from it. So
okay, we got to talk about one more disease before we end. Start with you, Michael. The disease is you start the 10th inning off with the runner on second. Is that a disease or what?
Well, Ralph, I gave you a temporizing answer on whether or not I thought Trump was crazy. Now I'm going to give you an even worse temporizing answer. As an employee of Major League Baseball,
Zugnist, as my grandmother would say. You can't say it. You don't have to. Jerry, you're not an employee of Major League Baseball. What do you think? And then I'll tell you what I think.
I'm not an employee of MLB, and I think it's dumb. I don't think it. I just think it destroys the rhythm of the game. Today, Mike Scioscia was quoted that 70% of the games end in the 10th inning anyway. So big deal if it goes. It's just part of it, and I don't see why they're doing it. You go into the 10th inning, you put the guy on second base, a bunt and a fly ball, score the run. The other side, same thing. They could tie the game up just as easily in the 10th inning.
Exactly.
It could go on. It doesn't make any sense as far as I'm concerned.
Let me at least throw a couple of things in here. The law of unintended consequences never, ever, ever takes a day off. And one of the unintended consequences of this law is going to be, we're going to find out just how good the Oakland A's are at bunting, aren't we?
Yeah, for sure. Although I did see Matt Olson lay down a bunt on Tuesday night when they had four guys out in the outfield. I guess that's the new defensive tactic with the shift on, to put four guys in the outfield so that if you hit a ball out in the outfield, it'll be an out. Whereas all he had to do was lay down a bunt. He's laid it down, and he made it quite safely. So, and I think the guy who was on first went all the way to third because no one was covering the bag.
Leading off the inning. It was leading off the inning because the Giants announcers talked about the fact that leading off an inning, particularly on the 9th or 10th inning, that was a good tactic and it was worth using. But in general, they said if you can get Matt Olson to lay down a bunt and stop at first base in the first 7 innings of the game, you got to consider that a win.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Okay, guys.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
No, some of the things that are going on. I think that they overuse the shift on the players today. I know they do it all the time, and it cuts down. It cuts down on hits going through up the middle, hits that would go into right field from left-hand hitters, and so we got a game now that's walk, strikeout, home run. Walk, strikeout, home run. And I miss the advancing the runner. I miss the hit and run. Bases aren't being stolen. They don't want to give up an out. And everyone's going for the 3-run, Earl Weaver baseball, 3-run home runs. It's nice when you hit the home run, but watching the game, a walk, strikeout, home run, it's not the same. I
would have liked to see Gwynn or Carew come up against that shift. It'd be like Willie Keeler, hit them where they ain't.
Yeah, they had great back control. Those guys, the other hitter too that would do well would be Nellie Fox. Remember, he had that big thick handle bat. Great back control. So guys like that. And what Ichiro, it was no problem for Ichiro. He could put the ball wherever he wanted. So, yeah.
But guys, let's be slightly realistic here. Nobody was ever going to shift on Tony Gwynn. He wasn't a pull hitter. And nobody was ever going to shift on Rod Carew. He wasn't a pull hitter. I mean, Tony Gwynn, for God's sake, he was known as Mr. 5.5. He lived in that hole. If you were going to shift on him, you were going to put 3 guys on the left side.
Right. Well, then he hit it on the right side.
I mean, my personal feeling on the shift is I think we have to differentiate here. I have no problem with the shift. You can shift wherever you want to. What I have a problem with is infielders playing 70 feet out on the grass. If you want to stack three of your four guys on one side of the infield or the other, go for it. But in my personal opinion, every infielder should be required to have 1 foot touching the dirt when the pitch is delivered.
Yeah, well, I've seen guys thrown out from short right field, where normally it would have been a hit.
I've seen guys thrown out from medium right field.
Medium right field, yeah. It's a shame. It's a shame, but maybe they ought to you ought to suggest it to Manfred to do something about the shift, if they can put some parameters on it.
The next time he calls and asks for my opinion, I will.
You should.
Has he called
Believe
it?
me, he should.
I'm not holding my breath, Jerry.
All right, guys, quite a show. Let's not wait this long to do it again.
Well,
we may have some actual games to talk about.
Yeah, the Giants
that would
open
be
up
nice.
tonight, and Kershaw's is scratched with his back. I don't know if he's going on the IL tonight, but he's not pitching tonight.
Oh,
well, the Mets lost Stroman as a pitcher, and that's going to hurt them. So it's just business as usual early in the season and late in the season at the same time, if you think about it that way.
Yes, indeed.
These are the dog days of summer. Welcome to opening day. Already.
Well,
exactly.
The one good thing is usually with 2/3 of the season, this would be the 2/3 marks. We'd have 2/3 of the season gone by this point in time. Most of the pitchers can't even lift their arm at this point in time. They're going to be fresh for the 2 months. So hopefully they won't have sore arms or sore elbows, but they should be pretty fresh until the end of the season.
Well, whoever you root for, it's nice to be in first place in July, even if it is tied for first place.
And Major League Baseball.
Now that we know that there's going to be 16 teams in the postseason and 3 series in the first round, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we're going to see mighty few postseason games with 7, 8, 9 runs on the board. I don't care how loud your trash can is.
Right.
Yeah. and the A's will have the advantage they can get by the first game. Because the last 2 years they lost the first game and were eliminated. So this way they got a chance of make it into the ALDS at least.
Yeah,
that would be nice.
Maybe the Pirates are looking forward to a 3-game series against the Giants for a change.
Right. All right, guys. Be well and stay healthy, please.
You too.
Jerry Feitelberg, Michael Duca. I'm Ralph Tycho, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Happy trails.
See you
guys. Talk to you later.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.